Like it's extended gratification.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
think about what you can leave people with that goes beyond that moment. It's not like, oh, I came here and I learned something and then it's on me, that application of the learning to improve my life. It's something tangible that immediately improves your life.
Welcome to the 4 a.m. report. Let's face it, we all have to market. Large or little, it's harder than ever to stand out in a cluttered space of one-size-fits-all and copycat marketing moves. Welcome to the 4 a.m. report, a micro-podcast that brings you valuable conversations with people on the marketing dilemmas keeping them up at night. Here are your hosts, contrarian marketers and creative clutter cutters, Susan Diaz and Will Lamont.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 4 a.m. report. This is not a visual effect. We actually are in person.
Mhm.
Our first in-person recording in like a year and a half,
I
basically.
think so.
Yeah, or maybe, no, last summer we did a few. But anyways, so we thought we would today talk about throwing virtual events. We just had a really successful one that had 100% attendance. Woo! Last Monday. So a little while ago, and we thought we'd share, because we got some good feedback. So we thought we'd share the way we approach these virtual events, what we've learned from the virtual events, and we thought we'd even give you kind of a case study by infusing some examples from the event we ran into this episode.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I think I'm excited for this. So essentially, what we wanted to be addressing, to give you some context in this space is, sure, in lots of parts of the world, things are opening up again. I think maybe, people are getting back to in-person in small doses. But that said, I think virtual events are not going anywhere, right? We're going to be continuing to run stuff like this for a while, whether it's all of your programming or a majority, you're going to still keep using it. So with that said, how do we move away from that Zoom box effect that we're all just held hostage to these long video calls where there's no real quote unquote value being given, and how do we overcome that? So we started to recognize some of that burnout and say, even though we had something in place, which is a book club, and we can talk about what that was in a second, we had a book club in place mostly because we wanted to facilitate that hanging out. There's no events to go to. So, you want your network, you want your community, but people were getting a little bit overwhelmed. Like what were we seeing in terms of problems with the book club?
Well, because when we first launched it last year, there was an enthusiastic response, and we did it every other month. And, towards like 5 or so in, it was just more and more people were just saying, oh, it's Monday, I can't make it tonight, or
I haven't read the book, which was one of the big ones, right? I mean, people were like, and we said it's okay. In some cases, the authors were coming by with like an opportunity to meet the author, but read the book later. But that's part of the, I think, people's thinking is that if you go into a book club, you need to have read the book, which was just a lot of pressure.
And honestly, me personally too, it's like, we were sick of being on Zoom 2 months into the pandemic last year. So it's sometimes when you're just not in that mood, you're kind of like, not today. So to combat that, we wanted to, or what we did is we wanted to up the entertainment quotient of our event. I think what we're going to talk about could apply to any size of event, but specifically for people who are running events kind of that size we were running, up to like 30 people or so. I think these tips are, because you're kind of doing it yourself and you might just be using Zoom. So I think the tips that we're going to share today, I think can be very useful in trying to get better attendance to your event, and also people leaving with something, a tactile takeaway, something experiential.
Tangible, So essentially, what do we think is there a formula? Let's go all snake oily on this one, Will. So is there an actual formula to something like this? If we were to say there was a formula, it's like really bringing that experiential element where it's something more than an average Zoom box. B, I think you want something tactile. It's like you're interacting with something in your space while being a part of an event, right? And so you have to think about what that might look like for you. And then the third part is what you mentioned, which is that entertainment quotient. And we firmly believe that bringing a little bit of not boring, like don't make it boring.
And also, like Susan was saying, those first 2 points, not just listening to a talking head, right? Because the first thing that happens, someone's just talking, you don't have to do anything, you start multitasking, you're responding to emails, whatever. We wanted to make sure people were there with us, in the game with us. So making sure that it was an experiential experience. was so key. So
the buzzwords are thick here. Yeah. Okay, so we'll break that down and say, using our sort of little quote unquote pivot of moving from one type of event to another, what are some of those factors that we believe really, like if we break it down, what really went towards making this 100% possible? It's possible, especially in the case, we have a few clients who also say this, shout out to Colleen, especially if your events are that sort of 6 to 15 people, like smaller roundtables and breakout rooms and those kind of things, you really should expect a very high level of attendance, right? So if you follow some of these steps, hopefully it'll help you get a little bit higher on that. So number one, like Will said, you need to have that value and that fun. And how did we bring that value and fun? It was through sort of our selection of the actual activity, and we'll get to that in a second, and the person for the activity. But I think a second very key point, Will, and we're in agreement here, is that no sell. Yeah. Like you want to not have one of those 45-minute webinars in which the first 15 minutes is a self-indulgent introduction to yourself, and the last 15 minutes is a hard sell, and you're left with this tiny amount of,
So over those, by the way.
So that's the second point, is keep it a no sell zone. And then the third one, maybe Will, you want to talk out some of the parts of the entertainment part of it, like so how do you infuse that entertainment quotient?
Well, I think from the start we wanted to set the tone, and I mean, people know us, so they know that it's going to be a little more loose, our delivery, a little more interactive. There is going to be humor. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for enjoyment and entertainment. That's kind of how we lead,
right?
with our events.
Yeah, and then the next part of it is knowing that audience, which you're saying that our people tend to like that format. They tend to come to some of the events that we throw, not because there's any sort of shortage of events online, but because it's like, oh, this is like a pleasant little interlude to my day, right? I mean, it's fun. They like the structure being a little bit easy and being able to talk to each other and that sort of thing. So that was the second part. The third one is the choice of guests. And
we wanted, because and I guess we'll get to it in a minute what we actually did, but we wanted to bring a guest on who really showcased and uses entertainment in her digital content production and distribution. She does it really well. So because we wanted to talk about that, infusing your content and your events with an entertainment quotient, we're like, let's bring on someone who actually we really see do this very well. And we also knew like what she did would completely resonate with the people we had there too. Should we just tell them what we did?
Yes, we should. We probably should.
We're talking around self-indulgent introductions. No, I'm joking.
No, this is actual topic.
Yes. So Susan already mentioned we had an every other month book club. And that even evolved we started with business books. Then it ended up, the last one we did was fiction. So we kind of already went on our journey there, and we're like, okay, you know what? Let's do something totally different, but still get those same people together. And we decided to do a virtual cooking club.
Yeah.
Why did we pick that?
I think it was because of like a few things together. One is the resonance between the person in question, which is Andrea Buckett. She's a chef that you'll see on TV, and she runs a lot of her own awesome properties. So one of them was that we did understand her and her approach to food, and that worked. So that was first. I think the second thing was like dessert. Like, who doesn't want to stop what you're doing and make dessert? It's like a good little hit there. And then the third part of it, I think, was seasonal. Yeah,
Ontario strawberries. So a lot of times you want to make whatever you're doing seasonal and timely. So we said, let's make. It was Andrea's idea, but we loved it as soon as she said it. Strawberry shortcakes using fresh Ontario strawberries, and I do not regret that we did that at all. Even though I ate so much strawberry shortcake that week. Anyways, and we knew this, then people would actually leave the event. We were gonna have a point we wanted to make about entertainment and the entertainment quotient in your content, throwing it to Andrea. Yeah. They would be interacting and doing stuff, cooking, following along, baking. And they got to leave the event having learned a few techniques about making strawberry shortcake, having met some new people, but also with something tangible to go and eat with your family. It made 6 servings. I tell you, when you live alone, you basically count on going up a pant size after that. So
it was awesome. I loved that. It's like, what were we calling it? Like, it's extended gratification. Like, think about what you can leave people with that goes beyond that moment. It's not like, oh, I came here and I learned something and then it's on me. That application of the learning to improve my life. It's something tangible that immediately improves your life and increases your pant size, according to Will.
Yeah, so right, exactly. Just in time for swimsuit season.
Then what else did we find over there? Like, we talked about, a couple of things in the handling that I wanted you to spotlight, Will.
Sure.
We did it was interactive, it was fast, it was an hour, right? Yeah. So how did we manage that engagement?
Well, I think one of the things, aside from what we already said, like, don't be overly try hard and self-indulgent with the introduction. We did have a little, here's Andrea, here's why we decided to do this event. We want to make a point about entertaining while you inform and educate. So Andrea's great at that. We let her talk a little bit about that. Then we got right into the making. One of the things that we were big on, we didn't want to over police. I understand if you have a big event, you've got to be a little more in control over people wanting to talk, put their hands up. We debated how this would go. And it just worked so well that we just let people, as they were busy cooking, they could just unmute themselves, ask a question. We only had 12 laptops, but there were some other people with those people. So in total, it could have been closer to 20 people cooking with us.
Yeah.
But it worked really well for that size. I didn't want to be policing it or reading comments, which we did allow people to go in. Susan actually had a great way at the beginning to cut down on the introductions.
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah, essentially I was using the comments for the introductions, because otherwise in a room of like Will said, there was about 20 people in total, who were in there, and getting everyone to say even if it's a 30-second introduction, that would have taken far too long. So we had people sort of drop notes in the comments, and comments can get like crickets sometimes if you're not actively managing it. But I think really encouraging people early on to talk amongst themselves. And that starts with an intro. So that went well.
And something else too that we really believe in and we try to instill in our clients is, right now, nobody needs to be perfect. It's almost the imperfections, the bloopers, the missteps, just add to that entertainment side of things, right? So Andrea herself was confused about her own recipe because she forgot she'd printed it on the back, and other people, I know I did something before Andrea said, and we had to scoop it out and redo it. So it's just those little magical, unplanned moments. Are what we kind of live for, and it makes everybody chuckle and have fun, and you kind of bond a little better when that sort of stuff happens. So that's a big one too. Again, stop trying to be perfect with your events. It's not going to happen, and you will just stress yourself out, and then afterwards feel bad that it didn't go perfect, because that's the stage you set for yourself. So ditch that.
So true, ditch that. And then if I might add a sort of a layer to this and say, often people will say that when you want to connect with your people, with your network, with your community, the holy grail of connection is when you manage to sort of be a part of their lives, right? Whether it's like, here's a picture of my family eating this, or here's me having this for breakfast the next morning, or whatever it is, like you found a little place in their life. And I think that is what you want to try to do, because that's what they're going to take away and remember. And there's no sell in this, in the sense that you're not going to be like, oh, I held that event and then I closed these 3 deals. That's not what you're going for here. This is like long-term relationship building, and you sort of need to hunker down.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to one thing, when I'm saying, ditch the perfection, this is not to say that we didn't have several chats before planning out the structure and kind of the points we wanted to hit throughout. So of course we created that frame, the structure for the event, but within that, we just wanted things to flow. And we are the king and queen of being like, and if it goes this way, let's go this way. So
I like it. Yeah. So true. This is not to say like show up like unprepared and try to wing it. It just means I plan to be unplanned, work it all out. Like, it comes with having several scenarios in our head and having a deep sync of knowing as a team how we would like to handle that. So that's the event portion of this. You want?
Well, no, one thing I was going to say too, and this is something Andrea Buckett, our chef, she's a TV chef, and she's amazing. Andrea Buckett Cooks is the handle she goes by, so you should check her out. But one of the things she said about how it's become so natural for her to just be a little more humorous, show a little bit more behind the scenes, be a little more real with her brand online, is because, you spend all those years being an expert, and you learn your trade, and you're an expert in it. Once you know all that, you can relax. And like, let the personality come through and be a little more vulnerable. And she said the past few years she's done that. She's loosened up a lot, and she now is finding she's resonating with people more than ever, especially during this time. So that ties into how we approach the event too. We knew it was going to be okay. We knew how we wanted it to go. We knew both of us could jump in and moderate at any time. With that being said, relax.
And have
let
some
it
fun.
go. So
we enjoyed it, right? You got to enjoy it. Okay, so that was the event and the sort of motivation part of it. And now just to close, we'll talk through what I think was a pretty key, and I told you this, a pretty key part of why I think people came along and that 100% happened was you brought people along for that ride. Our email, we often talk about emails. It's like closing now, cart, like grab the offer. It was none of that shit, right? But it was a well thought through sequence of emails that you and the team put together. So talk people through that a little bit.
The last thing I wanted to do was, a lot of people like to follow these frameworks they're given, and I find it a little obnoxious. Sorry. Because you can see the framework and you it doesn't feel authentic, and you I don't know, it's almost like a little bit too, it's almost like a little false enthusiasm vibe you get from it all that kind of I personally don't enjoy. We still wanted to bring enthusiasm, and we still wanted to make sure we were reminding people, because again, we're all busy. And the last thing I wanted was for someone at the last minute to be like, I can't find the grocery shopping list. So once we had people all signed up, and that was kind of a little bit of a sequence in itself, then it was giving them the calendar, of course, the calendar and Zoom link and that sort of thing, giving them the recipe, reminding them of what they needed to prepare ahead of time. So it was a combination of a few emails where it was like direct information. Hey, here's the recipe. Here's what you need to do ahead of time. We'll see you on Monday. Another time it was like, let's lean into what we preach here and really just throw out a random funny email that, of course, at the end reminds them about it. So I did a whole story about how a strawberry isn't technically a berry. No one knew this. I didn't know this. It's because the seeds are on the outside. A strawberry is not technically a berry. It is a member of the rose family. So that blew my mind. So I wrote a whole, it was almost like an internal monologue of me going a little crazy, trying to figure out why we ended up calling it a berry when it's actually part of the rose family.
The straw rose.
The straw rose berry.
Monologue.
Yeah. And I went deep into like pretending I was mayor of Easttown, that HBO hit with Kate Winslet trying to solve this mystery. It was a little silly and ridiculous. And I did write it at 11 o'clock one night after a glass of wine or two. But that just kind of mixed up kind of what we were doing. And then the next email was again, hey, just in case you don't have the recipe. So it was a mix of like real information, having a little fun, and not overwhelming them with too many. Because I know some of these frameworks people do for getting people to attend an event, it's like,
too many.
Holy crap. It's like a daily email and then 50 on the day of. So, which might work for some people, but that's not us.
Yeah. So that I think was really, really stellar. And some of just to help you understand some of the impacts of that email, we had a few people respond to that Mayor of Easttown and, straw rose monologue situation, saying this is incredibly funny. And it really is, because I think it hits that sweet spot between we're a little silly. We've got lots of pop culture references in the way that we talk. And it really seemed to stand out for people. And then there's a few ways in which you can do the actual material. Some people will go through the logistical thing of having it delivered. But you know what? If you don't have that kind of budget, this is an example to say that you can totally like order up a grocery cart that contains basics.
Something else I find, and Susan always encourages us to do this. Yeah, even if you are just giving them a shopping list in one of these emails saying, here's your homework, shop for these groceries and have them ready on your counter, putting in a weird GIF. And everyone's doing GIFs now too, but how many times have we seen that same Oprah GIF, that same, whoever else GIF, right? I say, yes, keep leaning into fun visuals, but like maybe go a little outside of the tried and true, push yourself a little on that.
Find a theme or like a whatever. Like for the longest time, I think I'm still in the phase of I will continue to use Schitt's Creek if I can find Schitt's Creek.
You will never stop using that.
I will never stop using David Rose gifts to define almost everything.
Yeah, I know, right? See, there we go. We know what to expect from this brand. Yes.
I mean, he's an example of a good writer, right? He's a brilliant writer. He's got awesome visuals. He made a show. Why wouldn't I use it? So I love that. So that folks is sort of this is a long teaching, going through it phase by phase. It's a framework that you can follow easy enough. I think that wherever you are at that sort of attendance level, if it's below 50%, if you apply some of these tips to bring people with you, and really, I can't stress enough, like take the sell out of it. There's all sorts of other ways in which you can sell, but when you get face time with people, use that time well.
So if you were going to say, one, like your top key, your like one thing that people should remember when they're planning their next intimate-ish virtual event?
Take it off screen and make people interact with you in some way.
I like
whether
that.
that's drawing something or eating something or drinking something. That would be my one tip.
Yeah. Mine, lighten up. Like, plan, you've got this. Don't stress out if things aren't going exactly as planned. Lighten up, laugh at yourself if something goes on, laugh with people. And this could be even if you are really doing even a serious teaching thing. Lighten up, have a laugh. People will laugh along with you and want to come to your next one probably.
Awesome.
Is that it? Are we done? Done? Okay, we're done. Bye, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're losing sleep over a marketing-related problem, let us know. Drop us a line at cp.digital. Sweet dreams. Well, hopefully.